Welcome back to the ESM podcast. I'm so thankful that you've joined. Today's episode is sponsored by Tyler Kane with Statewide Mortgage. He's a senior loan officer with 20 years of experience in helping people with their home mortgage needs. Whether you're a first-time buyer, looking to refinance, or just want to discuss future home ownership goals, give Tyler a call, 813-380-8487. Or you can set up an appointment at his website, which is provided in the show notes. It just does not get any better than Christians helping Christians. Speaking of which, thank you again for being here with me. Let's get started. Good morning. Welcome to the program. I think we're going to have a lot of fun today. This is basically story time. Last week, I was in Colorado. I had this wonderful experience meeting new Christians. I want to share some of that with you. It built towards a breakfast where I got to sit down with a guy and listen to him tell his story. I love the story so much. As he was sharing it, these real-time applications and ideas were flooding in my mind, and I asked him at the end, is it okay if I tell some of your story? And he said yes. So I don't know that he knew it was going to be a podcast, but I think he listens. So, hey, Rob, thank you for your time on Monday morning, and I hope that your life helps other people today. Okay, let me back up a little bit. I'm going to mention some names today. If you don't know them, it will not in any way negatively impact what we're sharing. But if you do know them, then you might find it cool that these connections abound in the body of Christ. I flew out a little over a week ago on a Thursday morning to Colorado Springs to work with the Northeast Church of Christ. If you've ever been out there, you know how beautiful it can be. The weather was perfect. To the west, Pikes Peak just looms over every single part of the city. You can see it from everywhere. And it was a wonderful experience. I stayed with the local preacher there, Coulter Wickerham, and his wife Lauren, and their daughter Lydia, and their son Scott, and we had this great time. Scott made me eggs every morning. Shout out to Scott on egg-making skills. And the meeting just went so well. Everybody was so supportive, new relationships, long conversations, great food, the whole thing. It was just a wonderful time. And a really cool part of the entire experience, and one of the first points I want to make today, is that there is another congregation in town, the Northside Church, which has about twice as many members, and they came and supported us all week. There were visitors from that congregation Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. It looked like in the dozens on some of those services. And this was not a unique event. When gospel meetings are held at these two congregations, they are at peace with one another, they are genuinely supportive of one another, and they show up and they demonstrate that. And I just want you to understand, as a local preacher coming into an area where I'd never been, with a lot of people that I did not know, to see that kind of support. And of course, we would make connections about people that we knew and have all those great talks, but to see that kind of support made a world of difference for me, number one, but more importantly, for the brethren, the brothers and sisters in Christ who worship there. I don't know about you, and this is not the topic today, lots of random points coming your way today, but there are some trends we need to reverse. One of those trends is local members of the congregation not attending and supporting the gospel meeting put together for their benefit, and even more than that, and to the point, congregations in the area letting tensions or disagreement over things or long, old, scarred-over issues keep us away from one another, away from praying together, singing together, studying together, and having conversations about our families and our lives. We need more of that togetherness, not less. We need to utilize these opportunities. I love it when I see it. I get the chance throughout each year to travel around the country and preach and teach, and there are times and places when it feels like nobody wanted this thing, locally or in the area, but more often than not, and particularly lately when heading west, you just see this great support. It's almost like they all know they live in a mission field and they genuinely need each other and they're not afraid to show it. So while this isn't really where we're going today with the story that I'm going to tell from a Monday morning, it is one of the first things that I just want to encourage you to think about because it matters. Okay, so that point is not totally random because it is what led to the rest of today's episode. Among those visitors was a man named Rob Taylor. Rob is a shepherd at the Northside Church. Rob did not know me, and I did not know him. I know his son-in-law. His son-in-law is named Dan Langford, and he preaches there, and Dan and I got a little top golf in that week. But other than that, Rob and I did not know one another, but he loved the congregation, and he wanted to support them. And Mr. Rob came Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday morning, Sunday night. It was awesome, really. And he was so positive and kind. And I knew the tiniest bit about his story, his business history, really from Dan and some other people. And so I was looking forward to a chance to sit down with him. And he asked if we could have breakfast together on Monday morning. So we met at a little cafe in the Black Forest section northeast of the city, a beautiful area, and had an hour or two together. And Brother Taylor began by saying that he was not raised in a relationship with Jesus and he was not converted to Christ until he was 27 years old. And that's one of the first things that I want to share with you pertaining to this conversation. He's 73 now. You'll hear at the end how significant that number is to him. It's actually pretty funny. In fact, go ahead and check the thumbnail for the episode today if you want to get ahead on the number 73. But in those years, he's done a great many good things for God's people. Charitably, certainly. He shepherds a congregation with some other men and has been doing so for a long time. He has strong Florida college connections, if that's your neck of the woods, and has had a great influence there as well. So just a quick note, you do not have to be raised among God's people. You do not have to be pedigree Bible class trained from 4 years old. You can join the Lord's work as an adult as soon as that gospel is introduced to you and changes your life, and you can do incredible things for God. I sometimes wonder if the first-generation Christian converted in adulthood does not have some advantages over some of us who are raised among God's people, because it is a distinctive life difference with momentum and direction. And he demonstrates that throughout his life in so many wonderful spiritual ways. So if you started early, if you're raised in the church, you have many tools and talents to help. But no matter when you come to Christ, God can use you. And sometimes even more so when you've made that transition from a life in the world to a life for the Lord. Okay, back to Brother Rob's story. He flashed forward 10 years. He's 37. He's married. He's got young daughters at home, but he's in the restaurant industry. It's something that he trained for in his youth and that he leaned into as a career, but it was zapping most of his time. It was very difficult to be at worship services. It was very difficult to be at home for his family. If you've ever been in that industry, and I have not, though I have people close to me who are currently, it is a lot of work, a never-ending line of work. You work Sundays, you work late, and it's just generally very difficult for balance. So he made a decision around that age that he needed to make a change, and he began praying about that change. And I also think that's worth a quick pause in this story. If you are pursuing a career, a line, a direction, and the balance isn't there, and the balance does not feel achievable, even if you've poured years and years into something, you've got at least three categories in this story. You have occupation, career, and money. That's one category. You have your family. That's another. And you have faith and Christ and the church and your spiritual work. And he noticed that one of those was pulling too strongly from the others, and so he worked towards change, prayed about change, and stepped out in faith. So what do those step out in faith moments look like, and how easy are they to recognize? Well, maybe not quite as easy as we'd like. He said right around that time, a friend reaches out to him and says, have you ever heard of Chick-fil-A? Chick-fil-A in Colorado Springs is looking for a new operator. And Rob tells the guy, no way. I don't even think I know what Chick-fil-A is, which is kind of funny. But back then, like 35 years ago, do you remember when Chick-fil-A's were only in the mall? So we really didn't know much about them unless you spent time there. Well, that was the situation. He said, look, if it's fast food, I'm not going to do it anyway. I'm not going to move from what I'm doing to that. So he was praying for change, but it didn't show up looking like he wanted it to, and so he cast it aside. But he said it wasn't many days after that. I was at the mall. He said I had like $2, so I don't know what I was doing there. But I was at the mall anyway, walking through the food court, and some young person reaches out with a toothpick and a piece of chicken on the end of it and hands it to me. He tells me, I put that thing in my mouth, and I thought, wow, this is really good chicken. So I went over to the counter and ordered a chicken sandwich and a lemonade and sat down and thought, this chicken is delicious, and this lemonade tastes freshly squeezed, and I thought, maybe I should look into this. And he said, just then I looked over at the panel, and I saw closed on Sundays. And he was like, whoa, wait a minute, this is it. This is what God is doing. And so he met with the young operator who was there, who maybe was moving on or something like that, and they had a very long conversation about taking over that particular store. So from that moment, he was convinced this was God's answer. Now, more of the story is upcoming, but I think that's a key piece of this. He prayed, he was resistant, but the evidence showed up again and it became very clear to him. Was it God's plan? Well, there would be no way to be sure. A couple of things would need to happen. You would need to apply yourself in the direction of receiving the gift or the blessing or the direction that God had planned, and you would need to trust enough to be diligent about it. And that's where this story goes, and that's what I want you thinking about as well. It's often hard to see how God is trying to help you reorder your priorities, even if it means a massive change in direction, geography, occupation. But when you pray and that door opens, be optimistic about it. Be someone who expected God to do something, and so when it happens, you lean into it. If it's not it, or if God changes directions, you're open for that. But you have to give it a shot. And that's what he did. He said, I went home and I applied and sent him my information to become the operator of that store. And then, as if preordained by the gracious God of heaven, he got a letter in the mail the next week saying, no, you do not get the job. It explained that they had these tiers of kind of ins or influence. You know, Chick-fil-A is one of those family-owned businesses where if you work your way up, you have a better probability. And so there were 5 tiers of access, and he was on the bottom tier, tier 5, which is someone with restaurant experience and education, but no connection to the company. So there you go. I started a great story, and it ended with utter failure, and we thought God was at work, but he wasn't. And I hope you have a good day, and we'll see you next week. But no, that's not the end of the story. You knew that already. But it is a point worth noting that sometimes what God intends in the building and reshaping of your life will present challenges and discipline and difficulty to see how badly you want it or how boldly you will act in faith. And so here's what Brother Rob did. He said, once a week, I called HR and said, I got to know the lady pretty well there and just asked, has it opened up again? Is there anything that I can do? And she would be like, sir, I really appreciate you calling, but you don't need to do that. Your application is in and we're kind of settled at the moment. But he just kept calling and he would try to bring value. He would say, hey, just calling and checking in. If anything's changed, just know that I'm here. I'm really good at building teams and I have a lot of passion for faith and all these things that he just kept adding to the conversation, not being abrasive or pushy, just being present, being confident, and continuing to show diligence. He told me it was about the 8th week that instead of him calling her, she called him and said, well, we've had a little shift in things and we would like you to come in for some interviews. Now, I didn't know this about Chick-fil-A, but you don't just come in for an interview and become the operator of one of their locations. You have to go through many interviews. And so he did that. He was going through the gauntlet of all those things. And interesting, a little side note about faith and about the way that you behave even away from where your goals are. He worked at a restaurant at the time and there was a bar at that restaurant. And one of the men found out about that doing the interviewing and said, I don't think you could run a store for us. I mean, you worked at a place with a bar and there was alcohol. And Rob said, well, I don't drink. I've left that life behind. I've turned to the work of the Lord. And though I'm in the vicinity, it's not something I do. And the guy didn't seem to believe him. The guy was like, you want me to believe that? I don't know. And he said, call my boss. Call the guy I work for. And kind of interesting, the next day, I think he said when he got to work, the person he was working for at the time said, hey, are you applying at Chick-fil-A? Some guy called and asked if you drank. And of course, this man had integrity and he reported that Rob did not. And that went a long way. I mean, that was a big criteria for Chick-fil-A, you know, like the holiest place for chicken in America. So I think I should pause here and say a couple of things as well. One thing I forgot to say, this is a big moment, what's about to happen for him in his life. He was 37. He wasn't 21. He wasn't what you would call classically young before he started a family. He was right in the midstream of building out his career, and this great opportunity for change came. And I want you to understand that. You cannot put a number on when God is redirecting your life if you are prayerful, if you are alert, and if you are willing to put in the work. So I think that's really cool. It's one of those stories where things change midstream for him, and it can for you. But you have to be a person of integrity. If you want access to something that has integrity, if you want to work with someone or for someone who's good for your family, who's good in the development of your faith, and I think this organization qualifies for that, you have to understand those people want people who respect the Lord. If Mr. Rob is over here working this job and occasionally he's drinking and he's not behaving in the right way, but nobody knows and it's not going to matter, people would have known and it would have mattered. But the fact that he was living out his faith the best that he could before it became known or it got investigated is exactly the reason that he passed that test. So the story moves pretty quickly from there. He became the operator of that location, and eventually, as it began to move out into brick and mortar exterior to the mall like we see it now, he became one of very few operators of two Chick-fil-A's in the same region, and he did that up into about the age of 70. He's 73 now, and just a few years ago, he transitioned away from that, and they found some other operators. But during that time, he was blessed in so many ways and able to use those experiences to help other people, to employ people, to serve people, and have a better name in the community so that he could become a better shepherd. And he utilized these last 35 years to take what God had given him and make it mean something for the Lord and also make it mean something for other people. You don't just receive the nourishment of God to bear fruit for no reason. You receive the nourishment of God to bear fruit so that people can experience the produce that God brings about in you. And with that in view, I want to talk to you a bit about age and where he is now and those who are a little farther along in their lives. I noted 27 as converted and how God used that, and 37 as redirecting career, but also working and serving people and invigorating team members with confidence and treating people who are hungry for chicken as guests and hospitable to them, and building out that way of thinking helped him to thrive in life and joy and relationships up until the age of 70. And as I'm sitting across from this guy at age 73, he still has so much energy, so much purpose, so much joy in serving people in life. You can see how he took so many cool things that he learned from that experience and he's applied it to shepherding and encouraging people and treating them kindly. Again, almost unprecedented for me to say this, but here's an elder of a congregation across town came to every single one of our meeting services, and he was not alone. His wife came frequently, lots of other people from that church. And so I just want to speak to those who are a little farther along in things. I hope God has been training you and redirecting you and softening your heart and increasing your sense of grace and teaching you how to love and how to be loved. Please never give up on doing that. Wherever you are and whatever you're doing, how is God training you to care about people? What happens so often, I have these conversations far too frequently of people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who just don't have any purpose anymore. People aren't their purpose for whatever reason, which is like the purpose that we're still here, is to help people know the Lord. And if you can stay growing in the way that you love, and in how God is using you, you can stay excited even to the age of 73. And my brother Rob is excited about 73. I asked him, how old are you? And he put a huge smile on his face and I'm 73. And then he told me some things about it. And I'm going to read this for you to make sure I get it accurate. He said, 73 is the best number because it's the 21st prime number. Its mirror, 37, is the 12th prime. And its mirror, 21, is the product of multiplying 7 and 3. And in binary, 73 is a palindrome, 1001001, which backwards is 1001001. And I would tell you, man, I wish you could see the smile that was on his face when he said that, but I can show that to you. Check out that thumbnail for the episode. He lifts up his outer shirt, shows me his t-shirt, and all of that was written on the shirt. Like, this guy is rocking 73. It's his favorite. And that is what I want. I'm 47. The opposite of that is 74, which is, okay, I don't know. I don't know my numbers or primes, but it's a good time. But I want life to be filled with joy for however much he gives me, and I want to have more joy when I'm 73 than I do today. And I watched a man let God work and embrace that work and embrace people. Our time is up today. I didn't want to take one story and make it long, but he talked a lot about how you serve in the Chick-fil-A industry and how all of the participants who are there to eat are guests, but also how you have to make those who work there feel like they're the most important piece of this entire thing. And you build out this family and there's so much joy in it. And in my work, wherever it might be, or in my family or among God's people, I want that. I looked at this man and thought, I want this. And I left there optimistic and inspired and in some ways redirected, and I hope the same is true for you. I like to end every episode that I can, at least, with the title, and I didn't say anything about the title yet, but here at the end, when I first met Rob, the first thing that I said to him was I addressed him by the name that I knew him by, which was from somebody else. And so I'll finish it this way with you. I hope that you feel encouraged and joyful today as you've heard this incredible story by the Chick-fil-A guy. Thank you again for listening. If it's helpful to you, please consider sharing with a friend. Speaking of friends, I want to mention once again the sponsor for today's episode, Tyler Kane with Statewide Mortgage. They service Florida, Texas, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Colorado, and Alabama. 20 years of experience. They can help you with home mortgage needs, whether you're a first-time buyer, refinancing, or just discussing future home ownership goals. Their website is in the show notes, or you can reach Tyler directly at 813-380-8487. He is a trusted friend and brother, and I encourage you to reach out to him. And in whatever you do today, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, excel still more.